On the next Probably True Solar Stories, a semi-sweet retired teacher gets inspired by Greta Thunberg to advocate for solar energy. But when her neighbors make excuses for not getting a solar quote, she starts a radical social media campaign that almost gets her arrested by the local sheriff, who happens to be her grandson. Welcome to episode 3 of season 2 of Probably True Solar Stories. I'm your host and solar storyteller, Tor Solarfred Valenza. As you might have heard, this season's theme is solar noir. Classic film noir usually involves crimes and crimes of passion, and that's what this next episode is all about. Although this crime of passion is on the more humorous side. It starts with a death, and there is some nudity, but not the kind of nudity that you might expect. No need to plug the ears of any nearby kiddos. In fact, despite the constant mention of the word naked, this story is G-rated. You'll see. Here we go. The Naked Solar Lady is written and read by Tor Solarfred Valenza. And now, dear friends and family, let us hear some words of remembrance from the Naked Solar Lady's grandson, Sheriff William Murphy. Thank you, Father, and thank you to everyone watching in the great solar state of New Jersey and around the world. Stacey Murphy was my grandmother first, and that was a long time before she became known as the Naked Solar Lady. Stacey spent her final years promoting solar power and aggressive climate action, but people still get it wrong about how a 78-year-old grandmother got to be known as the Naked Solar Lady. Many think it was because of her being on the cover of Sporty Women magazine, but that centerfold was a solar advocacy stunt after she got her Naked Solar Lady name. How do I know? Because I was there. So now, for the final time, for everyone here and everyone watching, this is the real story for how my grandmother, Stacey Murphy, became the Naked Solar Lady. It all started 10 years ago. As I said, Grandma was 78 and feeling restless, but that's how she always was. She was restless in Ireland when my grandfather first immigrated to the U.S. He was supposed to come and get her, but she waited about a month, and then she got on the plane herself. That was the way she was. Always impatient, but for good things. After she retired from 40 years of teaching, Grandma was not one to sit around and play bingo or watch TV all day. The name Stacey means steadfast and fruitful, so even though she was retired from education, she did not retire from helping children. She babysat many of you in the pews today. She also tutored and read stories at the library and was pretty much the neighborhood's instruction manual for how to feed and care for a newborn. But that's not why she became famous. Grandma had two heroes in her life. The first was Muhammad Ali. He was strong, he endured, and he was a man of principle. Later in life, her number one hero became Greta Thunberg. But she wasn't always a fan of Greta's. When Grandma first heard about Greta Thunberg going on her student school strike every Friday, she was very much against it. I remember telling her, "Grandma, she's doing it to bring attention to the world's lack of action on climate change." And I remember her giving me her look. She said, "William, I don't care if she's doing it to bring attention to stray puppies, gun violence, or the high price of eggs. A young lady shouldn't be encouraging other children not to go to school. If I were in Sweden, I'd grab Miss Greta by her pigtails and drag her back to school myself. Climate strike indeed." "Grandma, I'm sure you would," I said. "But she's saying we're in a climate emergency and that adults are not doing enough to stop it." "Bull Tootsie Rolls. She's just acting out. If Miss Greta wants to learn how to give a proper speech, she needs to be in a proper school." I told Grandma that Greta Thunberg knew how to speak very well for a 16-year-old. She sniffed and said "Bull Tootsie Rolls" again. She didn't believe me until I showed her a bunch of Greta speeches on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. After she watched a few and heard Greta's famous "How dare you" and her "blah blah blah" speeches, and her talk about words that sound great but has led to no action, Grandma became a Greta groupie. From then on, she made me teach her how to tweet, Insta, post on Facebook, and TikTok. The only person she followed was Greta. She tweeted and Insta for a few weeks, and then one day she came into the sheriff's office, and she was so excited. "William, you won't believe what happened. Last night, I put a tweet to Greta. I said, 'Greta, I may be 78, but I'll use me old bones and hoarse voice to fight for you children for the rest of my days.' And she hearted it. She hearted it, William. Do you know what that means? It means that Greta Thunberg knows I'm fighting for her. And for you, grandson, it makes me want to fight Muhammad Ali harder." And Grandma meant it. Within a month, she put solar on her roof, she planted trees, and she stopped eating beef, except on St. Patrick's Day, when she had a thick slice of corned beef. But Grandma also believed in keeping fit. "I'm no Muhammad Ali, move like a butterfly, sting like a bee, but I can at least shuffle my feet around the block a few times a day." Grandma became one of those super walkers. If she didn't get 10,000 steps in a day, she'd do 20,000 on the next. And it's that exercise routine that led her to becoming known as the Naked Solar Lady. Boom, la 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 la, boom, 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 la 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 la, boom, boom. On one of Grandma's walks, she looked around the neighborhood and wondered why her neighbors hadn't installed solar too. So she started, at first, a very neighborly social media campaign. I remember her first videos. It was very polite, and it went something like, "Hello, fellow neighbors. This is Stacy Murphy on Facebook, as if you didn't recognize me on the video. I'm standing here in front of my new solar panels. Aren't they lovely? They're saving me lots of money, and they're helping me to save the planet too. If you want to know about going solar for your home, just knock on my door, and I'm happy to tell you what I know so that you can get a quote yourself. Bless you for caring about the world and your children and your grandchildren." Her videos got a few likes, but none of Grandma's neighbors asked her about going solar. And after waiting a few months, none of them went solar either. I told you, Grandma was impatient. So one day, she saw Mrs. Ashford on the street, and she asked her directly if she'd seen her video and had any solar questions. Mrs. Ashford told Grandma that she'd seen it, but she thought solar would look ugly on her roof. To Grandma, it was as if Mrs. Ashford had said that I was ugly. She said to Miss Ashford, "I beg your pardon. My solar panels are gorgeous. They're as sleek and as black as an electric Black Panther. They're stealthy on the roof, pouncing on my electricity bill and eating carbon for breakfast, lunch, and early dinner. They're a tailored black tuxedo, prettier than your bare-ass naked roof, let me tell you." Notice she said bare-ass naked roof. Well, Mrs. Ashford smiled and walked away. But Grandma was triggered. She went right home with an idea for a new solar advocacy campaign. A few minutes later, Bill, our 911 dispatch, got a call from Mrs. Langley down the street. Mrs. Langley told Bill, "Bill, get someone down here right away. Mrs. Murphy is holding up her cell phone and screaming about someone being naked." "So you have a flasher in the neighborhood?" Bill said. "Yes. Mrs. Murphy just keeps walking down the street and following someone. She's saying, 'Naked!' and she's got her phone out like she's trying to take a video. Naked! Did you hear that? She just walked by my house, took a picture, and yelled, 'Naked! Please send someone over. My babies are coming home. I'd hate for them to see anybody naked.'" So Bill knew that Stacy was my grandmother and sent the dispatch to me in my patrol car. But the Asbury Park Press and Channel 5 monitor our police scanners. And when they heard the word naked in a radio call, they sent over a news van with a live satellite feed. Well, I got there expecting to see Grandma chasing after some guy with his pants down. Instead, I saw Grandma doing selfie videos in front of every home in the neighborhood. She was pointing a finger at the empty rooftops and yelling, "Naked!" Let me tell you, I thought she'd gone loopy. So I got out of my patrol car and I approached her with great caution. "Grandma? What are you doing?" "Not now, William. I'm doing a TikTok of all the homes in the neighborhood that have perfectly good roofs for solar, but are naked." Then she pointed at Mrs. Agostino's roof and she yelled, "Naked! Disgusting!" "Grandma, please stop. The neighbors think you're chasing after a streaker." "Do they now?" By that time, the Channel 5 news van had arrived, and that really turned her on. So she marched right up to the camera and said, "You came for a crazy news story, eh? You wanted to see a naked person running around for shites and giggles. Well, it's not that. But I've got something just as shocking and lurid. So keep your cameras rolling and get a wide shot. For 5 blocks, all these houses are as naked as the day they were built. If they were respectable and proper houses, their roofs would be decently covered in beautiful black solar panels and setting an example for the other naked solar houses. But everyone's got excuses for why they haven't gotten a solar quote. They're too expensive. Blah, blah, blah. How do you know they're too expensive unless you get a bloody quote? Have you ever heard of a solar lease? No money up front, and you still save 10 to 20% on the utility bill. You don't like the look of them. Blah, blah, blah. Then you care more about your curb appeal than your own children and grandchildren. Solar doesn't work at night. Blah, blah, blah. You'll still be connected to the grid, and if you want backup power for the 2% of the time of the year that there is a blackout, you can now get a battery. So I don't want to hear any more excuses for naked roofs. You say you care about children and the environment, but you can't solve climate change? Bullshit. Are we live? Good. Don't bleep that. I meant it. The least you can do for your children and grandchildren is to go to the internet right now and pick 3 companies to give you a solar quote. Not this weekend, not tomorrow. Now. Lift your damn hand with your glued-on mobile phone, open your Google or Bling, or go on your Safari and search for a solar installer in your town, USA. It's not rocket science. Takes 5 minutes. If it doesn't make financial sense, don't do it. Climate change is the gun to your head, not getting a solar quote. If it does make financial sense, then what are you waiting for? Another hurricane, another flood, another drought, another fire. Are you going to go solar after these things happen to you? When you don't have a roof, naked or otherwise? How silly is that? Don't let the oily gas men and their lackey politicians and TV pundits put doubts in your head. Get a solar quote. Make your own energy. Save money. Stick it to the oily gas man. It's their greedy, lustful eyes that are counting on you to keep your roof naked. But don't you let them. A smartly dressed solar roof, that'll kick them in their perverted climate denial scrotum. That's the news here. You've come to see someone naked. Well, that's not me. I'm dressed properly, but your roofs are not. Get a quote. Dress your house with solar panels. And when you do, send your finest photos to my @NakedSolarLady Twitter feed. I'd love to see them. And that was it. That video went viral around the world. Since then, you sent over 1 million pictures to my grandma's Twitter feed. And I can tell you very honestly that every day she looked at your pictures for as long as she lived. Every time I'd see her, she'd show them off to me like they were her grandchildren. Look at that cute solar roof, she'd say. The sun must be very proud, turning all of its glorious energy into powering that home. The oily gas men must be shiting in their oily boots every time I get another photo. It's marvelous, William. And Greta, she follows me now. Bless her heart. And bless your heart, William. For what? I asked her. For dressing your house with solar, son. If I couldn't get my own grandson to listen to me, well, then I really would have been a crazy solar lady. But you did listen, and I'm grateful. Thank you, William. So that's the real story of my grandma, Stacy Murphy, the naked solar lady. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for watching. But if you really want to honor her memory, please just get a solar quote. Make her proud. So, is your roof an embarrassing naked roof? I hope this episode inspires you to cover it up with solar panels. How did I come up with this story? Well, I'm like Stacy. It's super easy to get a solar quote these days. It takes 5 minutes, and yet, when I'm walking through neighborhoods, I see a lot of naked roofs. And when I'm flying into major cities, I always shake my head when I see all the empty warehouse roofs that could be filled with solar panels. On one of those walks, I thought of the old "Where's the Beef" commercial, and I just imagined a sweet old lady being disgusted in front of a house and saying, "Naked!" I can't tell you why I made her Irish. Forgive me for the bad accent, but that's the voice that got stuck in my head. Anyway, that's all for this week. If you enjoyed this episode or a past Probably True Solar story, please share it with friends, families, coworkers, and pets. You can also sign up for our newsletter at probablytruesolar.com and learn about some live storytelling events and new episodes. Oh, and if you're a solar product or service that would like to tell your own mini story, go to probablytruesolar.com and click the sponsor tab. We've got some creative solutions for that. Probably True Solar Stories is a production of Unthink Solar, PR, and Communications. Be bold for solar, stand out, and educate. See you next time.